to go live.
Great.
All right. Hello, everyone. Greetings from IEEE and NITK. So today we have, as a part of the Enkindle series, we have a very special guest, an alumni from NITK and from the Mechanical Engineering Department, who did his PhD from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and is currently working as an optical engineer at Apple. His name is Robin Singh, and he has been an inspiration for many of us and is a person who is rather famous in college even today. So, hi, Robin. Could you just introduce yourself?
Thanks, Chandran, and welcome everyone. And thanks for having me here for this live session. And today, let me first share my screen and then I can introduce myself. All right, so today I'm here and just to talk about how to approach higher studies in the US. And before that, a little bit background about who I am. So currently, I'm an optical R&D engineer at Apple, located at Cupertino in California. So I work with display optics team. So basically, what we do is we research and develop our next generation iPhones, Apple Watches, and other futuristic wearables. And as Chandran mentioned, so for my education, I have done my PhD in optical engineering from MIT. So I just graduated a couple of months ago. Prior to that, I also did my Master of Science, kind of mix of mechanical engineering and optical engineering at MIT itself in 2018. And before that, I was just another student like most of us, BTech in mechanical engineering at NIT Surathkal and graduated in 2016. So coming to our topic of interest, how to approach further studies in the US. I'll keep my talk brief so that we have more time open for questions and so that we can have more interactive session and you can ask me questions online and I'll try to answer them to the best of my knowledge and through my experience. But something that I just wanted to quickly share based on my experience, so I have prepared a few slides and I would like to share them with you all today. Before we get into like higher education, I would just start with like few generic tips related to the higher education, particularly in the US. The first and the foremost thing that I would like you all to give a lot of thought about is your interest and career goals. So BTech is perhaps the time, or like undergrad is the time where you transit from your just high school or and to more in like in career. So it's the best time to understand, okay, what are your interests, whether you chose engineering just for the sake of choosing it, or there's something about engineering that interests you, or maybe not, like maybe there are other things that you want to do and you are completely open to that. So I would definitely recommend you all spend some time to know what interests you. So, and then go for higher education only if interests you. So instead of more sort of following the generics crowd, like where, okay, after BTech, you might want to do MTech or MS or MBA. Like first do this only if that is something you want to see your career heading towards. And of course, if higher education is something that you want to do, I would highly recommend you to find the right school for your course. uh, right school as in like the right universities, and that is not something very easy. A lot of us have huge trouble finding the right schools. So it involves a lot of research. So I would recommend you talk to seniors and just do a lot of Google search, like research to understand what schools offer, what kind of course, whether that interests you, whether it caters to what you are looking for, and then go to the next step. And then from my experience, having some industrial experience is always helpful before your graduate school, because sometimes when we are just in our BTech phase, we don't realize what technologies are relevant to industries, or where this entire industries or corporate world is heading towards. But if you have some experience that helps you understand, okay, which is the sector you want to hop on, and before that, like you can decide and join the grad school. Particularly for those who are interested in more rigorous technical programs like PhD, I would recommend explore research projects on campus at NITK or other Indian research institutes to get a feel of it, to get a feel of what research is, how do you approach a project, how do you frame a problem statement, what's its impact, motivation, and a right approach towards approaching a problem. That takes a lot of efforts. And not to say that you would get within an internship. Trust me, even after PhD, I don't feel confident approaching all these research problems myself. So it is something that we just learn with time. People spend their entire life doing research. It's completely okay to be lost in this, but just to get a feel of it so that you are better prepared for PhD. And then if you are interested in technical courses, just like a PhD or Master of Science, I would recommend you to focus on your basics, as in like the technical basics that you learn during your classes. It's very normal for us to take these classes just in a grain of salt, but I would recommend it's good to just have those basics right, because trust me, as you go to your graduate school, it really helps. Like, you know the basics concepts better, and it helps you understand easily. And as I said, just to say, don't follow the crowd blindly. Give a lot of thought at your level, and then only decide what you want to do. Well, that's more about the generic tips about to say, but now let's come directly to the components of our graduate school application. These are mostly designed for the US based universities, but I assume the basic architecture of these components is very similar, even if you apply in Europe or Australia or Canada or any other country. But just to divide these components, I would say you can divide them in two components, primary and secondary. Primary components are more that I feel are more mandatory and are required. And secondary components are something that backs up your primary component. So in primary component, I would say first one is statement of purpose. Then letters of recommendation. These are the letters that come from your professors or from the colleagues that you have worked with. So there are mostly usually three of those that are required. And then GRE or other equivalent standardized test scores. So if you are applying for MBA, it would be a GMAT. Then TOEFL exam, it's more sort of spoken English exam. And then a resume that talks about your experience and your research interest or your interest in general. Then the secondary components that help your graduate school application are having a decent GPA. Decent is very subjective based on whatever is comfortable to you. Research or industrial internships. The internship exposure outside NITK helps you understand, okay, what's going on, as I said, like be it in a research institute in tackling a research problem, or industrial internship where you are working on a real world impact problem. And then projects in general, the projects outside your regular coursework that helps you understand the approach. And then extracurricular, just being in general to understand, okay, what are things outside the curricular activities set up at NITK. They also help your graduate school application. All right, so now I would more focus on these primary components and try to understand each of these components and how important they are. So so in these slides, I ask a question, and then with different colors, I talk about the impact of each of those components and just discuss about them. So the first one is GRE. So how much does GRE matter to your application? And I'm sure this is a question that a lot of people ask, and there's no generic answer or a right answer to it. But if I were to quantify how much it matters, I would like to keep it between low to medium. If I have 3 levels of impact, low, medium, and high, I would say somewhere like low to medium impact. And so this is GRE is just like any other standardized test. It is good to have a sufficient score so that it doesn't raise a red flag on your application. So when you send a graduate application, it should be sufficient enough that, okay, this is too low or score, or this is too high of a score. So you should just be able to cross a minimum limit, and after that I don't think it matters that much. And in fact, over last few years, what I've been seeing, more and more universities are getting rid of GRE requirements. So in your application, like a lot of top tier institutes have now got rid of GRE in their application. So meaning that really it is something that's not impacting your graduate application as much as other things do. But just to give you a feel of what GRE is, GRE has two components, quant and verbal. So quant is more math and verbal is more English based. So if you're applying for technical courses like master, MS, or PhD, quant score is what that matters more. So if you can maintain a good quant score, that would help you to get through this requirement. Well, one more thing that I want to add. So based on so if you do a little bit search, you would realize that few universities prioritize GRE more and few don't. So that you would realize just doing a little bit more of research and talking to senior who have gone to those universities, and to understand, okay, what were the requirements, GRE requirements to that particular school. For particularly MIT, I feel MIT doesn't care about GRE at all. Department of ECS doesn't need GRE. And in the mechanical engineering department, even if they ask you GRE score, I barely think that they even check your score. They see other aspects of your application. Then coming to your statement of purpose. So statement of purpose is a document also called statement of intent, where you describe why do you want to apply to that school, and you describe what makes you a good candidate to that program, and what you want to do in that school, and what are your future goals after that course. So basically it's a platform to describe your you can use your background, experience, career achievements, research, and internship to drive these points in your statement of purpose. Something that I would quickly advise about this is, whenever you write a statement of purpose, be clear and succinct. So a rule of thumb, something that you can have, is never exceed more than 2 pages. These graduate committees they receive about thousands of applications, and they don't have time to go through your entire statement of purpose. So shorter it is and clearer it is better for them to understand about your achievements, experience, and higher are your chances to go through that process. So I would say you can also use some bold words or highlight things that you feel you have achieved during your research or any career achievement, so that it stands out and that helps the committee to make a decision for your application. Further, I feel statement of purpose, of course, you can always use this platform for all your positive experiences, but not to say sometimes we do have some gaps or sick leaves, or maybe for example low GPA. It's anything. So this is an opportunity. This is a platform where you can try to explain why it is, so that it makes sense to the committee and gives an opportunity to your application to back your entire base. With that, then we talk about GPA. So CGPA, I know people have a lot of mixed opinion about, okay, how much does CGPA really matter? And that is also subjective, and it depends on what you really want to do and where do you see excelling yourself. Well, even though if GPA is just a number, but here it may not be, it does count. And I'll tell you why does it count for your graduate application. Well, like whenever I spoke to these graduate committees, like like in my department at MIT, and I just asked, why do you think GPA matters to them? Their like professors, their reply is like, it shows how serious you are in learning the coursework. So they think that, okay, if you have like GPA is just a minimal requirement that shows, okay, you were regular to the classes, you attended all tests, maybe surprise test, or you prepared for the classes. So it sort of, at least to some level, shows that, okay, you were serious about learning the coursework. Whether you learned how much, it's a question of debate. And then if it is low, as I said, SOP would come to your help, and then you can use your SOP to explain why it was low. So you don't need to be in panic mode if it is low. I've seen a lot of people with a moderate GPA getting into good universities. But if you have a high GPA, definitely it would add to your application. So it's a one positive check mark on your application to proceed further. Then coming to your resume or CV, it's important to understand the difference between resume and CV. So resumes are more like shorthand or like brief document, and CV is more used in academia for your detailed description of projects, your publications, your experience, your interest, etc. So I personally use CV, but I've seen people using resume as well to their application. So this also matters a lot, and I would say it has high to medium impact. So use your resume to summarize all your experiences and achievements. So and that could be like, of course, there are a lot of templates online on the overleaf that you can see, but just to give a brief idea, your education, your research interests, your experience, your industrial experience, if you have any publications, and then extracurricular, or you have any teaching experience. So keep them all in like different sections, and that's really helpful. And again, keep it short and readable. They don't have time to go through everything, but just highlight things, have the bulleted points so that it drives your point directly to the committee. And focus more on the sections that are not covered in your SOP. Sorry, there's a typo here. So as in SOP, you have already mentioned maybe more particularly about an experience that you felt is more relevant in tying down the story of your intent of applying. So you can use resume to give light to things that you haven't highlighted in your statement of purpose. But not to say that they all should still make tied together and they should make a story. And then I would say LaTeX is highly recommended. That's what I feel, because using LaTeX to some extent, and in academia, professors or like all these researchers, they have very strong ethics of approaching a problem statement. So if you spend some time making a resume look good, or use LaTeX, which is more sort of an official way of writing documents, or any like scientific documents, it gives a good feel to, okay, your entire document looks more readable. Make sure you don't have typos. So that's again like it shows that you were serious and you did proofread it multiple times. So that should also be something that you should make sure that there are no typos. Well, then coming to your letter of recommendations called LOR, I would say they have a very clear high impact on your application. So these letter of recommendation, as I mentioned earlier, they come from your professors that you have taken coursework with, or you have done research projects with at NITK or in other research institutes at India or even abroad. So we do get a lot of opportunities going for DARD internships in Germany or MyTax internship in Canada and many other independent internships. So do take that chance to take a letter of recommendation from those professors, and that really just helps your application, because now there are professors from different institutes or maybe perhaps different continents who are vouching for your application, and it just looks good on your entire portal. So letter of recommendation, I would say it sort of also acts as a validation to whatever you say on statement of purpose and resume. So sometimes what we put it on our SOP or resume, like, may not be validated. Like, we may write things that we might not have done sometimes, and that's something that we should avoid, and it's not ethical. But like, if you have same thing coming from letter of recommendation written by professor, so in his LOR, it says that, okay, this student worked on this problem and he got these results, and I was really happy. And the same thing in a very different perspective from your side is coming on statement of purpose as well as resume. So it just closes the entire loop, and this gives a graduate committee a lot more confidence on your application. Generally, like, a rule of thumb that I feel about these letter of recommendation, generally every university needs about 3 of these. I personally took one from NITK and 2 from the internships, because I had 2 different internships from different research institutes. Or else you can have 2 from undergrad and then 1 from internship if you have just 1 internship. So, but just make sure that these people or professors who are writing letters for you, they have good things to talk about you, and try to approach those professors whom you have worked with, so that they have more content on uh, to write, so that they can vouch for your application. And then putting together, I would say SOP, resume, LOR should speak for each other. So just to say, your, like, whatever you have, as I said, SOP, resume, LOR should make a coherent story and stitch all together. So that's the intent of these letter of recommendation. So now coming to TOEFL, TOEFL is, as I said, it's also a primary component of your application. And what I feel personally about TOEFL, or I think most of us know about this, it has a very low impact. Generally, committee doesn't see your TOEFL score while scrutinizing your application. It is, you are good to go as long as you satisfy the minimum score criteria. So, like, generally based on your school or university you're applying to, they have a cutoff of 110 or 115 or 100. And if you're more than that, that's all, because it's just considered as something that, okay, you can understand English, you can talk in English, or and then you can listen the lectures delivered in English as well. So just check these minimum requirements on their portal while applying during your application. Well, I think that's a quick summary of what I wanted to show you through my slides. Just a quick disclaimer. I think these slides what I prepared are just based on my experience of graduate school and life in general. So I'm sure, like, people can have different opinions on approaching it, but these are something that worked for me and helped me get admits from good schools. Not to just end this, but I would like to have this session more interactive now, so that I can directly answer your questions, and we can, like, if you have any particular doubts in the slides that are presented, we can go to that, and so that it's more interactive and it's just not one-way traffic. So thank you, everyone. And here is my contact information. So you can email me, other than, of course, asking doubts now. And with that, I would like to open up to questions. Hello. Hey Chandran, can you hear me?
Yeah, Robin, can you hear me?
Yeah, Chandran, I can hear you.
Yeah. Uh, all right. So the first question was, what for a student pursuing MTech in India, what are the best ways to actually have a good chance of getting into a good school for PhD?
Sure. Yeah, I think there are a lot of opportunities even after MTech. And I would say, like, particularly for PhD, people like professors prefer like those who have some experience after their BTech before they just hop on to PhD. So if you have MTech from a good institute or in India, that helps you like just have accumulate good experience, and then you can write like lot more experience on your application, and I think it improves your chance. So definitely, I think if you still satisfy all these requirements of like GRE, everything, I would say very good chances.
Okay. The next question is by Vihan. So he has said that given due to the entire COVID-19 scenario, getting an international research experience is difficult. So what do you think is better, a research or industrial training in India or online international experience? So what would your views be?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think everyone is aware, like almost every country, like every university, every professor is aware of the current scenario. So they would be a lot more forgiving about these aspects, that okay, if you have even remote internships, that would be valued, because even all of us are working from home right now. So having said that, if you get chance to work in person, like in maybe one of the industries or research in India, that would make you learn a lot more compared to a remote internship. So if you are in one of the good like research institutes, maybe like IASC or IITs, they are very well valued outside abroad as well.
Okay. Um, so yeah, the next question was by Chandravaran. He has
Mhm.
asked, when we are applying to top universities like MIT, what is considered a good GPA, and also based on what course we are applying, should we take up related projects in the field?
Yeah, so I think GPA, I mean, I would talk more from NITK point of view, because that's more would deliver to the crowd. I wouldn't like to put a number on it, but if I were to say anything above 9.5, and would be something considered good, or at least would uh, like make your application stand out. So and in particularly for top tier universities, but I mean, but if you are, there are a lot of other very good universities as well, and I have seen people like even like 8 CGP or more than 8 CGPA with other good extracurriculars and other experience in industries have helped them as well. But yeah, I think I like mostly at MIT, if I were to say about this, I've rarely seen anyone. Most of these are the institute gold medals coming from IITs. uh, Trust me, like perhaps I was the only NIT, so I NITK student, so I was kind of feeling that okay, most of them are like 9.8, 9.9, or very high CGPAs. Yeah.
Okay. The next question was by Sarita Srivatsava. So, what extracurricular activities are preferred by selection committees while selecting students?
Yeah. So again, these extracurricular activities, I would say, like suppose you are applying for more management based programs, MBAs, or like Master of Management in Engineering kind of programs. It just helps to have more leadership experience, and to say more from NITK perspective, I would say being more active part of these clubs, or like organizing these tech fests, like cultural fest, and just to know like this entire process of how do you lead a team. That kind of experience helps, and that's more sort of for managerial programs. I would say for technical programs like PhD, by extracurricular, I mean like your interest in attending journal clubs, or maybe interest in explore or reviewing papers. Just like more. I would say like doing something for research or scientific community would be considered extracurricular. Like or maybe suppose if there is
Okay.
something organized at NITK, you could be an active part of it, like that would help. Yeah.
Okay. The next question was by Aparna.
Mhm.
Hello, I'm a second year MTech student at NITK. Is it indispensable to publish journal papers before applying for PhD in these universities?
Yeah, so I think I wouldn't say it's like mandatory, but it also depends on from what background you're coming from. Like, so if you're just a fresh BTech graduate, people don't expect too much. I mean, it's not about just BTech. I mean, even during PhDs, it's not easy to publish good journal papers. So I would say, like, if you are just fresh, it's not mandatory. But suppose you are an MTech student, and of course, like, there's a significant part of research project involved during your MTech. So it would be great to show that okay, in those what you have achieved in those 2 years through form of some journal paper. But having said that, it's much better to have no paper than having a paper in a in like a trash or like journal or something. So don't just force it for the sake of doing it, because committee would realize it very easily. But if you have something really good going with your collaborations with other research institutes or something good, great, it would definitely help you.
All right. So the next question is by Darren. So he has asked, Hey Robin, could you please brief us on optical engineering? How is your transition to it from mechanical? And what kind of work do you do as an optical engineer at Apple?
Sure. So yeah, I mean, so during my BTech, like I was a mechanical engineering student, but all my BTech, like during my research internships, I was focused on more interdisciplinary research of like related to nanotechnology, or that has to do more with applied physics. So that's something that I always enjoyed doing. And I wasn't very sure of doing optical engineering as such before coming to MIT, but as I joined MIT, and then I saw like a really great collaboration and project opportunities. So I started taking classes in optical engineering, and then like you learn those courses. And then of course, like like in lab also, when you do lab work related to optics, you tend to develop like the feel of the field, like feel of the field. And that's what happened with me, and then I just started enjoying it. It was more close to applied physics, and and something more interesting. And that's how I slowly, like, it was kind of like my master's was a segue for like transiting from mechanical to optical, and then I could major in the field of photonic or optics for my PhD. And my work as an optical engineering at Apple is more research and development based. So right now I work with display technology teams. So the display screens that you see on your iPhone, Apple Watch, MacBooks, we design and develop them for next generation products. And also we are also working on some projects that are not open yet, but that involves a lot of optics in general. So it's a good mix of, it's actually not a good, it's a lot of technical aspects as well as more of teamwork. Chandran, I think I can't hear you, but if I want to go forward, I can take the next question from Prateek Bhatt. What's your take on going to USB schools and transiting to from engineering field to business related fields? And what's the required GPA? So I think it is very normal, and a lot of our seniors have done that, and transiting from engineering field to business field. And I think it's a good combination of where you understand some engineering, and of course you learn a lot of other business and leadership qualities. So definitely a really good thing. If like, but it again depends on where do you want to see yourself, or how do you see your, like, what are your advantages, or what are your, like, what kind of personality do you have? Do you like more like managerial work or more technical work? If it is something, if business is something that interests you, definitely go for it. But if you have to come to a US based B school, I've seen people come here with a lot of job experience. It is very rare to find people right after BTech to join a B school. So accumulate a really good job experience, and then apply for good schools. Definitely they are expensive, but totally worth it. And about the required GPA, again, having a good GPA for any higher education or higher studies help. But in terms of, I think, B school, I would say this CGPA requirement is not as stringent as it is for your technical degrees like PhD or masters. And of course, if you have even like more like lower GPA, you can of course, kind of nullify that by some other extraordinary things that you have done. So yeah, there's no as such particular GPA requirement or a number.
All right. The next question is by Kushagra. Would one's profile after BTech influence the choice of MS program, or could there be a new area altogether?
So, as I said, like my experience, like I was never in optics before my master's. So it was a transition for me to the field of optics for my, like, personally. And your job profile after BTech doesn't influence much for your MS programs, because programs in general are a lot more open. They don't hire, or they don't admit you thinking that, okay, you are going to do nanotechnology or fluid dynamics or bioengineering. They just see that, okay, this candidate has good potential and has shown that through his experience, be it through an industry or through his undergrad experience, and that helps you to get a master's program. Well, from master's program to PhD, definitely I think your job profile would help, or also your like research projects during your master's would.
All right. The next question, are US citizens given more preference? If so, is it significant? And or do they only see the SOP and resume?
Yeah, so I think so generally most of these universities have a quota of how many international students they plan to hire that particular year, and it could vary from 50%. I would say sometimes it's even more than 50. So there are some universities where the international intake is like 80% of the batch. And then in MIT, I think it was about 47% was international student. And then there are some places it can go low to like 30, 35. So from that quota, like, I mean, they know that, okay, these many should come from different places. So you are competing in that pool itself. So not with the US citizen people or like US undergrad students. And so in that quota, of course, your SOP and resume, they would see that.
All right. The next question, what advice would you give to a first year student?
Yeah, I wish I could have asked this question to my senior when I was in first year. And I think first year, just be open. Don't be scared of asking right questions and explore new fields. If you're admitted as a mechanical engineering because of your JE rank, that doesn't mean that you are mechanical engineer and you cannot go outside that. And so yeah, I mean, talk to people with different background. It's not that okay, you don't like it or you like this. Just explore everything so that you have a right answer after your first year or second year, that okay, this is the field that interests me. And it's okay to be confused, and totally fine. I was also one of those. And sometimes confusion helps you in terms of, because you keep thinking until you get the answer, and that clarifies a lot of doubts in your mind. And yeah, so, and if you, particularly in the first year itself, you know that okay, you want to do you want to go for higher education, I would say look for internship opportunities, look for getting involved with projects on campus with different professors. There are a bunch of good professors at NITK who do good research, so work with them.
Live streaming is on.
All right. So yeah, now that live streaming is back, I'll just continue with the questions. We are so sorry we had to break. But yeah, Robin, the next question. Hello, Robin. Can you give us some insight into the scope of R&D jobs after PhD?
Yeah, so I would say particularly for R&D jobs, I mean, people prefer, or like companies prefer your proficiency in tackling a technical problem. And when it comes to technicality, from my experience, I felt PhDs are preferred over master students. So R&D, if you are interested in doing technical R&D work, go for a PhD and not just for masters. If you are interested in more generic profiles and want to explore like more generic roles, then a master's would be a good option. And even if you want to do a PhD and want to take like some idea of how this research in the US is, you of course first do masters and then go for a PhD later. But the scope is pretty good if based on your technology and your relevance to the industry. So just to give an example, if you are working in a field which is more recent, like I mean, if you are, for example, application of artificial intelligence in robotics, if you end up doing a PhD in that field, you would have tons of jobs. On the other hand, not to demean on any particular field, but suppose you are working on something that already exists, maybe conventional structural mechanics problem, then yeah, and then you end up doing a PhD in structural mechanics, there could be a chance that okay, you might need to do more or understand how do you find a job. It's completely your it's dependent on your field. Yeah. So
Okay. The next question, would a good paper on my MTech thesis at NITK and some decent work during the project work be sufficient for getting an admission at a decent university?
yes, my answers are yes and yes. Of course, if you have done diligent work during your MTech thesis and good work at NITK and you're able to publish it in a good paper, that helps. And and then you can of course approach these US universities for the admission. I think the best way to approach these university admissions would be in such a case, like when you have some research experience or you already have MTech, would be you should personally email professors of your field after doing a research on like their field, like who all professors exist in your field. Do a bit of homework related to that professor, draft more personal like more personal or customized mail, and just talk about your interest in applying for PhD under him. At times a lot of universities give you admission based on uh, a yes from a professor. So yes, definitely try that.
All right. The next question, if someone has a poor financial condition, can they still go for MS in MIT?
Yes. So again, my answer is yes. And something that came to me as surprise during my admit to MIT was, so the first email that you generally get, it talks about, okay, you are admitted to it. And they never talk about financial aid in the first email itself. But talking to seniors, I found that 100% of MIT students are funded, even if it is just MS or PhD. And that's a good thing about MIT. So even if you don't have money to sponsor your masters, don't need to worry about it. It will be completely taken care by the institute.
All right. One personal question I had to ask as well, Robin. How do you decide the country which you have to go for? Like, say your aim is to actually settle down in one of these countries after pursuing your master's and getting a job. How do you actually select your country as such, which you want to go for?
Yeah, so well, that's a good question, and I would say every country has their like strengths, and for that matter, US has its, like if for particular fields, US universities have really good lines of professors working in good universities. And for the other fields, more I feel more in terms of automation and mechanical engineering, there are German universities really great, much better than even US universities from my personal experience. So if you know which field you are trying to apply and you see that there are good universities or schools that are working in that field, you can decide on those, like whether it's Europe or US. So I would like to classify these like more continentally, because the just to kind of distinguish the work culture. Canada or US have very similar work culture, and I think US university approach tends to be more rigorous from my experience. And not to say that, of course, there are a lot of European universities also very good. They have their other advantages. So just do that kind of research, which field you are in and what professors you want to apply under. And in terms of your MBA profile, I think what I've found is, that's again my just personal take on this. US universities tend to be more limelight uh, for your higher education. So, and in MBA, a lot more to talk about, okay, what's your fancy degree, and to show your clients. And I think that way, if you say that, okay, you have an MBA from Wharton compared to, I'm sure, a lot of good places in Europe, that thing kind of creates a bias. So I would say my personal preference, if I were to do MBA, would be US.
All right. And the next question we have is regarding internships. Is it advised to be more explorative or to have a focused path on a particular topic, which would help my case on my CV for higher studies if I'm doing more than one internship?
Yeah. So, okay. I think exploring different paths, there's no problem with that. And you should definitely explore. To give my experience, like until second year of my BTech, I wanted to explore CFD, computational fluid dynamics. And that was only after second year. And when I had experience, like research internship opportunity at IASC, when I got to know or exposed to nanotechnology. So I did internship in nanotechnologies. And then my third year internship was also in nanotechnology. So then in that case, I didn't include any of my second year work. And then my SOP's resume had more of my third year or final year work, which was more on nanotechnology, because I knew that that's a field I want to work in. And that was because I wanted to apply for PhD. I knew that I have to do PhD when I was applying for grad school. But if you're just applying for masters, it's okay. You can talk about your different paths on the of your internships and just talk about your experience in general.
All right. So this is another question from a first year. So with regard to projects and other points which must be kept in mind, what do you think a first year student should try to actually consolidate as a good foundation so that they can ensure that they get a good university abroad when they apply?
Sure. So if you know that, okay, you want to do higher education abroad, know what's required for higher education. So do that homework, like talk to seniors, uh, and try to, as I also mentioned in my talk presentation, like try to make sure you have each of those primary components nailed down, and like of course secondary components also. So GRE, for example, you don't need to worry at the first year. Like you can take that in third or final year. But things like maintaining a good GPA could be the first stab you can have. Like, I mean, that's something in first year, it's fairly easy to maintain a good GPA, and that kind of rolls over like in your subsequent semesters, and that just it comes to an advantage for you in general. Um, Try to do projects, try to find internships, good at good places abroad or in India. And yeah, so I think make sure, yeah, I mean, like you do fair, like you understand the coursework, whatever is taught at NITK to greater level, and that would help you.
All right. So another question. So as you stated before, masters is not something we must take actually lightly, and it should be something which we take after due consideration. How do we actually decide? How did you actually come to the realization that you actually wanted to go for higher studies and not go for a job as such after graduation? So how does one get to that realization that they want to do masters over work experience?
Yeah, so I think during my until my second year, I was fond of like exploring more sort of like government jobs in India, and that was a primary reason for me to take mechanical engineering. Very normal mindset. Um, but as I started exposing myself to these internships, I had a great opportunity working with a very nice professor at IASC, and the team, like the entire lab environment was so good. that it really gave me a passion of like doing something like in the field of research or like doing research projects. And during that process, that created a path like after my IAC internship towards an internship abroad. So I had then chance to do my internship, third year internship through SN scholarship at Stanford University. And when it came to Stanford, I was completely like mesmerized. I'm like, wow, this is great. Like I was working with the best people, very efficient, like, and really smart people, so much to learn. Every day was great when I would go to internship, and that made it very clear to me that okay, I do want to do PhD just to stay in this field and explore research more seriously. So that's why I think during my application, I knew that I want to do a PhD. But if someone were to ask me now, perhaps 1 year of industry experience wouldn't have harmed me. It would have just given me a very different perspective. That's something I could have changed. Yeah.
All right. The next question, is it advisable to do an internship to save for a year after BTech and then apply for an MS?
Yes, definitely. I think an internship, or I would say more an extended research associate position. A lot of people do like year-round research at IASC or IITs. A lot of people also uh, could find ways to do it in Germany or other places, like internships after BTech, and that just adds a lot to your research experience. You have a much better letter of recommendation coming in from that professor. So yeah, it helps, and it's definitely recommended.
All right. So another personal question. So since some of us are in our third year and the sixth semester is what is the GPA which we'll be submitting and everything, and mostly final year will go in the entire application process. What do you think we should do in this last leg of a semester, especially given that it will be for its majority online? What do you think we can do in this last leg to actually maximize our chances of getting selected or doing much better in the application process?
Yeah, I think so. Now is the right time, given that most of us are like working from home. So it definitely buys us some more time to think about what we exactly want to do. And US economy, not that it's in the best position right now, but it is on a very good slope with the change in government and everything. So things look really very well for someone who would be applying for fall 2022, I guess, like third year batch. So something that you can do over next one semester, I would say, is plan. If you haven't taken GRE, you can try preparing for it based on how well you are. Like, I mean, most of us have good proficiency in math from our backgrounds of JE preparation and engineering, but based on our exposure to, like, how well versed we are in English, it may take like a month to 6 months or even year, like, to prepare well. So prepare that. Year is too much for GRE, but I would say you might need a serious 3 to 4 months of preparation, more like mostly like learning like new words. There's a vocabulary list on that, so you can plan that. If, and on the other direction, suppose if your GPA is say 7.9, and that maybe if you work a bit harder this semester, you can push it to 8. So try that. So then that way you can focus more on your like coursework to just improve your GPA, because if it comes 7.9 or 8, definitely it matters, right? But I wouldn't say like, oh, if yours is like 9.2 and you're like, oh, 9.3, I mean, it doesn't make much difference. So yeah, just be more cognizant of what's important to you. Like, would that 0.1 matters to you based on what GPA you are on, or your preparation of these GRE, or maybe like if you are able to do some projects like remotely with some professors, try to do that. Just see where you are lacking in these terms of components that I mentioned and try to just improve it. That's what I would say.
All right. So the next question, for MBA, is it preferred to do job after BTech so one could use the technical knowledge in the field of management? So which would you prefer, and what job as such would be preferred after doing your BTech before going for masters, either an MS or an MBA?
Yeah, so well, for MBA, as I mentioned earlier, the job is preferred. Like job experience counts a lot. And very rarely I've seen any good B school taking students right after BTech. So have like 3 to 4 years of experience before you apply to those places for MBA. And particularly in terms of job, technical knowledge or the field of management, that counts less as compared to which company you work for. So definitely there are some brand. Uh, I mean, I know a friend of mine. I mean, he worked for McKinsey, and like working for a company like that would definitely hone your profile for MBA lot more than like more like sort of a third tier company. So yeah, it depends on, of course, a tag thing matters to MBA when you apply. Like if they have heard of that company, maybe if it's Google or Microsoft, yes, it does count, and it doesn't matter at that point whether it's technical knowledge or field of management. So yeah, even for MS also, I would say don't take a longer break after a BTech when you want to do MS. I would say maximum of 2 years of job experience is recommended. If you delay too much, then your chances that you would get well along in the school setting again are lower, because you're just being more comfortable during your job. So I think 2 years or 1 year would definitely be okay for MS. And of course, like if you're doing a technical job and you're applying for MS, technical MS, you can write all of those aspects to your SOP.
All right. The next question, how to apply for internships at IISc and universities abroad?
Yeah, so there are bunch of methods to apply for internships in India and outside India. Starting with like internships in India, and more particularly to start with more like official ways, there is something called I think IES, Indian Academy of Science. It's a it's a it's a platform that allows you to like apply for internships in all research institutes in India, and then you are matched with different professors for different projects, and you can do your summer internships, and also you'll be paid for it from government's point, like from the institute. And then there are some more institute based programs, like most of IITs have, IIT Delhi, Madras, Bombay, have these like particular like summer internship programs. So go to their portal, see and apply. And IAC also has department based programs. So if you are interested in Center for Nanoscience and Engineering, they have this summer program. You apply for it, and then they select like 20-25 students across the country, and you are matched with different professors, and then you get to work with them. So that's how I got my internship at IAC. But those are the formal ways. Other informal ways are approaching professors through emails. So you send them email attaching your resume and talking about your experience and interest in working with them. And sometimes they get back to you. You might have a quick short interview, or sometimes they just take you. and yeah, and then you can just work with them. For abroad, there are more official ways that I would recommend. So for abroad, I guess again, more predominant ones are DAD. DAD is for Germany, German universities, and then there is something for France called Cherpak Fellowship, allows you to do internship in France. Your US is SNBO scholarship that allows you to do internship in the US. And then there are some more university dependent, like NUS, NTU have their own university level internship programs, or other like SURF, summer intern, undergrad research fellowships. So just like like do a little bit of more research on that and you will find them.
All right. And should one do a research internship after second year or just try to gain more skills?
So I would say, like, I think gaining more skill comes through an internship. An internship meaning your opportunity to work in a team or people who know more than you do in that particular field. So if I were to like say that, hey, this summer I'm going to learn Python, for example, the chances that you will end up learning with no final goal or milestone is tough. But suppose if you are doing an internship and your manager asked you to, hey, implement this on Python, yeah, you are gaining, definitely you're gaining a skill. And also you are doing it with a proper mindset of approaching a problem or a solution. So you gain skill through internships is what I would say.
All right. And without MS, can we still get into good companies abroad? If yes, then how can we approach that without an MS?
Well, I would say that's kind of tricky. I wouldn't say it's easy to get job in companies abroad without MS. Like if you mean Akash by right after BTech, I think I wouldn't. It's not easy. Um, there are some other companies which I think are mostly limited to some top IITs, but I think rarely it is very tough to find a direct job after BTech, and more sort of reasons because of visa related issues. So if you have MS from that particular university, you tend to get your visas much easily, and even company has reasons to vouch for your case when they file your petition or application for visa.
Okay. So the next question. Hi, I'm a second year metallurgy undergrad. For MS grad school application, how much weightage do the universities give to class 12th marks? And what should I do to improve my application?
I think I wouldn't even mention my 12th percentage, and they really don't care, because in your application, what they ask you are your transcripts from your BTech. And in your education, you can just say that my 10th and 12th schooling was from this place, and that's all. Uh, I think, and no one cares much because you have an advanced degree after your 12th, and that matters more. So I wouldn't worry too much about 12th marks, and 78% is not that bad, so don't worry.
All right. So I guess that's about it. I think that wraps up the entire Q&A session. So on behalf of IEEE and ITK, we would like to thank you, Robin, for actually taking your time off and actually coming and giving such a wonderful talk, especially the entire color coding and actually telling the weightage of which parts of the application are extremely important was actually very insightful. I don't think of the many webinars we've seen, none have been so succinct and comprehensive in actually mentioning all that. And that was actually great. And the extremely long Q&A session ensured that we could actually understand and learn from the various doubts, which I'm sure most of us had. So on behalf of IEEE and ITK, we thank you so much for this talk. And we are really grateful for you giving us this opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Chandran, and thanks for having me here. And definitely, all of those who are watching me, feel free to like email me if you have any questions, or yeah, I'll be happy to answer them.
That'll be all, everyone. Thank you for joining us.